İyi günler değerli izleyicilerimiz. Adnan Oktar'la sohbetlere başlıyoruz inşallah. Adnan Bey hoş geldiniz.
Hoş bulduk, ne güzel.
Have a great day, dear viewers. Our program is getting started with Adnan Oktar. Welcome.
Evet, güzel bir şiir. Rahmetli de güzel onu hazırlamış.
This is really a very beautiful poem. And the late performer, he's really prepared this song very nice. He just presented it so well.
Çok az. Eski sanatçılardan var.
And he's really a very respectful, very talented, very skillful performer, really. We don't have such amazing singers, such amazing artists, really, like in the past. And when we're looking to the entire world, we see that there are not really such good artists. That is definitely a calamity. That is a disaster that people never mention about. This is one of the most dramatic things that people never speak about. There are no artists, no talented, skillful arts performers about sculpture, paintings, arts, because people are in denial of God's creation. Because of Darwinism, they have named God's creation to be a coincidence. They just denied God's creation and claimed that to be a coincidence. And that, as a consequence, just diminished all the artists, and that just opened the door to this terrible calamity.
Hakkari Çukurca'da çıkan çatışmada uzman çavuş Kadir Çelebi şehit oldu. 6 asker yaralandı. Van'da ise sabah ve akşam çıkan çatışmalarda
There was a confrontation between the PKK terrorists and soldiers in Hakkari Çukurca. One of our soldiers were martyred and 6 of our soldiers were martyred. And in Van and Diyarbakır there were similar attacks carried out by the PKK terrorists. And in Muş, again, there was another confrontation, and 2 of our soldiers were martyred. These are the photographs of our martyrs. This is our village guard, Mehmet Alada, Muhammed Alada, Muzaffer Alada. He's one of our village guards. Kadir Çelebi, Maşallah, they are our lions.
Hemen apar topar oraya Resulullah'ın yanına.
This means that they would be eating their food just next to the Prophet. May God accept their martyrdom. May God prolong the lives of their family members. May God bless their families. May God show them guidance. And I'd like to show the photographs of our martyrs in Mardin. This is Cem Kambur. He was martyred in Mardin. Yılmaz Aksoy, he's a village guard. And Mansur Demir. They are the lamps in heaven. God is bringing all the friends together. They are just leaving the world one by one. That is why God mentions in the Quran that the martyrs are waiting for others to come to them. God is making them wait, which means that they will receive more friends. May God grant them all blessings. May God grant guidance and His holy light to His family members, and also patience and perseverance. They are our lion-hearted, brave hearts. They have a great honor, the honor of martyrdom. How beautiful, how graceful they are. And we are living through in this hardship in this world, and that is a beautiful way of trial in the world. But now, our martyrs, their trials have been eased so well. May God cover them with His holy light. May God accept their martyrdom. In the last 2 days, we have received 8 martyrs in the Tendrek mountain, which is situated in Van. It is stated that because of its geographical
Dinliyorum.
Başbakan Yıldırım PKK ile yeniden masaya oturulması hevesinde olanlara şöyle seslendi. Çözüm yok kardeşim.
The Prime Minister Binali Yildirim just addressed those people who are just willing to sit on the same table with the PKK terrorists. He said, we have no solution with the PKK. They have lost that opportunity. We will be resolving this matter about PKK terrorism. This is really so good.
perdesi. Aman benim gibi dertli misin? Aman aman halim neredesin? Aman kaldır canım perdesi. Amanım benim gibi dertli misin? Denize dalmayınca, aman bir balık almayınca, aman bir balık almayınca.
Kalp ve Tarkan buraya gelin. Hızlı ama.
Almayız, aman gökten olmayınca, aman gökten olmayınca, aman aman halim neredesin? Aman kaldır camın perdesi. Aman benim gibi dertli misin? Aman aman halim neredesin? Aman kaldır camın perdesi. Amanım benim gibi dertli misin?
Öyle sıradan bir imtihan olsak buraya gelmenin bir anlamı olmaz. Cennetin de bir anlamı olmaz. İmtihanın, eğitimin
If we would be passing through an ordinary trial, there would be no meaning for us to be here. That is why this trial in this world should be perfect, and God has created all the conditions for a perfect trial in this world, without being a martyr, without being a ghazi, a veteran, without having diseases. Living a sweet life and passing away would not be a perfect way of trial in this world. Trial should be complex. Trial should be complicated with all kinds of details and difficulties. And it is really very important to find the grace and beauty amongst every detail that God creates. Otherwise, everyone would be so ordinary. If there were an ordinary test and trial in this world, then life would be ordinary. But when one passes through all kinds of hardship and difficulties, that is how people attain this great worth and value. We have love for one another because of God's existence and because of our love for God. Otherwise, people would turn out to be wild. They would try to show off to one another. They would try to please one another, and that would turn into a deadlock. For example, on the 15th of July, God has created this coup. That was just to establish the grounds of a test of a trial, and people had the spirit to come together in unity. And we had martyrs and veterans, and this is how God made people think. People were in denial of Mahdi's system, and this is how God showed people that even a fake Mahdi, a false Mahdi, would be just bringing out such a great influence on people. And in a matter of minutes, really, the coup attempt was not successful. But if the minutes were just on their side, they could have achieved to accomplish their coup. May God forbid, they could, if they had assassinated Tayyip Erdogan, may God forbid, the coup plotters would be successful and the president would have been shot, and they would have made an announcement saying that the prime minister is under custody, and may God forbid, that would be the end, really. This means that the false system of Mahdi would have gained dominion.
Mehdiyet devrinde özellikle Mehdi çevresi
The trial,
daha
the
yüksek
test is
imtihan.
passing. And God
Avam
wants
vasat imtihan olur.
really a very
Mehdi
strong way
çevresi
of
daha
trial.
yüksek imtihan olur.
The people who
Yani
are
yükseklik
around Mahdi, they
derecesi
pass through all kinds
fazla
of
olur.
hardships and trials.
Derece yükseldikçe imtihanın şiddeti de artıyor. Ama tabii mümin hani benim vasat
When a
bir
person's faith
çok yazık
increases,
sana
the
sonsuza kadar vasat kalırsın. İmtihanın yüksek
the way of
olması demek,
trial
cennetin
and
yüksek olması
tests
demektir.
is just strengthened in this world. May God forbid, if your trial and test in this world is not that difficult, full of complexity, then your life in heaven would be so ordinary. May God forbid.
Mesela 1979'da ben İstanbul'a gelmiştim. Daha dün gibi. Televizyon
For
kanalı
example,
olacak.
when I came to Istanbul in
Facebook
1979,
internet
it was
olacak.
just like yesterday.
Yani bize rüya gibi öyle şeyler.
I would never
düşünemiyoruz
imagine
daha.
that there would be Facebook, internet, a TV channel.
Yani televizyon
All
kanalı.
these things
Daha
were
öyle
really a
gidecek bir olay
dream.
bile değil.
People would never imagine that we
Facebook
could
falan adı bile
achieve
yoktu onların zaten.
such opportunities. We would never dream of a television
İnternetin
channel.
adı yoktu yani.
And the Facebook, its name was not really
Mehdiyet için Allah
around. It was not
İnterneti
invented.
yarattı.
The internet was not invented.
İslam'ın hakimiyeti için.
Just for the
İstese de
system of
hemen hakim
Mahdi,
ederdi.
God created
Yani
the
aslında bu
internet.
yıl daha hakim
Just to
edebilir-
make Islam
bitirebilir
prevail,
inşallah.
God created
Uzatıyor. Niye?
the internet.
Sevap çok olsun diye.
If God willed, God
Çünkü
would have
İslam'ın
made
hakimiyeti
Islam prevail.
ya
But God
Allah'ın bir şeyi yok yani.
prolongs
İmtihan,
the time.
e,
What is the
amacı
reason
yok.
for that? For Muslims to gain
Çünkü
more
İslam'a hakim
rewards?
olmuş herkes rahat etmiş.
Because
İmtihan
in
bir
making
nevi
Islam prevail, actually, God
bitmiş
has
gibi. Yani
no purpose for
%95.
trial.
Hatta
Because when Islam
%98
prevails,
bitmiş.
when Islam gains dominion,
Onun için
it is
Allah
as
çok
if the
uzatıyor.
trial is completed.
Bak
98% of the
göreceksiniz.
trial in
Hatta
this world
Allah'ın
is
fethi ne zaman?
completed.
Mehdi ne zaman
That is
zuhur
why
edecek?
God is persisting this trial.
Hatta bir kısmı diyecek ya yalanmış.
And you will see that people
Asla
ask for
yokmuş, doğru
God's
değilmiş.
victory.
Asla demez.
They will
Allah
ask,
affetsin.
when is the fetih of God?
Yokmuş diyecek.
When will Mahdi appear?
İşte böyle bir ortamda
And
Allah
some
son
will
kere
say,
hakim ediyor.
they have not told the truth. Mahdi does not exist. And in this kind of a setting,
Göz
God
açıp
will make
kapayıncaya kadar
Islam
yıllar
gain
geçecek.
dominion.
Her yer mamur hale gelecek.
Islam's
imar
morality
edilecek
will
yani.
prevail all
Binalar,
over the world,
köprüler,
and then just
bahçeler,
years will
bağlar.
pass. Everywhere will be
Sonra
corrected, built,
Bir haşerat
gardens, bridges, and all the
Haşerat
land
olsun.
will be just
o bağlar,
corrected,
bahçeler, güzel
and then
yerler,
there would
evler
be
falan hepsini yıkıp
there would
talan
be
edecek.
some kind of
Yani böyle
human
bir azgın
beings
nesil
that will be
türeyecek.
like insects,
Son
really,
nesil.
just parasites, and they would be just demolishing all
Kur'anları
those beautiful
toplayacaklar.
gardens, trees,
Kur'an
and
sayfası,
buildings.
Kur'an
That
geçen
would be a
kitaplar, dini eserler.
deviated generation.
Var ya piyasada satılan bütün kitaplar.
They will just bring together,
Sayfa dahi
collect all the
bırakmayacak.
Qurans and also all the
Dine
religious
dair. Camiler,
religious books
mescitler.
that bears the
Hepsini
verses of the
yıkacaklar.
Quran from every
Dümdüz.
house. They will not
Peygamber
even leave a
mezarları
page
gizlenecek
that teaches
önceden.
about religion. They will bring down and collapse all the mosques, the
Yani
masjids,
yıkmasınlar, tahrip
all the
etmesinler
place of
diye
worship.
gizlenecek.
And just before that period, actually,
Yani mühim
the graves,
şahısların
the
da
tombs
mezarları
of the
gizlenecek.
prophets will be
Çünkü yıkacaklar
concealed.
her
And
yeri.
also
O devrin
the graves
insanların
of
işi çok
important people, those will be just
zor. Bir mümin
concealed
taifesi
to preserve
gece
that
gündüz
from
ondan uğraşıyor.
demolition. The time
bu büyük
when the believers will
mezarlar
live
var.
at that time, they will be really
Abdullah
passing
bin
through great
işte,
hardship.
Fatih Sultan
A
Mehmet.
group of believers, they will be
Hepsi
taking care
gizlenecek.
of these very important matters.
Ya bütün
For instance,
mezarlar.
there is the
Anlayacak ümmet belanın
grave
geldiğini.
of Sultan Mehmet,
Sürat
Abdülhamid.
edilecek o son
All
nesil
these will be just hidden
bunu
away.
yapacak.
The
Onların
Ummah, the
yöntemi daha ayrı.
Muslim community, they will
Sonra
recognize that
kendilerini
it
bayağı
will be
gizlemeye
the
başlayacaklar. Çok
time
çok
of
çok
trouble for
gizleyecekler.
them. And they will be the final
Sonra da dünyaya Allah
generation
ferahlığı
living on top of the
getirecek.
world.
Kıyamet.
And then they will be in
Müminleri
concealment, they will be
sevindirecek.
hiding themselves.
Küfrü de
And then
kahredecek.
God will bring
Mümine yağmur
the
yağmış.
Qiyamah,
rahmet
the
gibi gelecek.
doomsday
Sevinç
to the world.
hissedecekler.
And believers will be in
Beklenen bir
delights.
son
That
oluyor.
will be like blessings. That will be joy
Ama bayağı bir
for
sevinç.
all the believers.
Kıyamet bak, mümin.
And that will be the
Allah
God,
seyredecek.
the wrath of God
Göreceksiniz.
upon the
Çok
unbelievers.
mutlu ve
And
mesut olurlar.
believers will be so much in joy
Sevinçli
really
sevinirler, kendi
during the
boyutlarında.
Qiyamah. They will be so happy, so much in delight on the time of the last day, because they will be watching all that scenery of the doomsday in their own dimension, and then everyone will go to their places. The ones who enter into hell, I have mentioned this secret about that. God teaches that they are dead people. This is really so clear, but people don't really understand. The ones who burn in hellfire are dead people. They are the ones who burn just like stones in hell.
Taş ve ağaç. Ölü varlıklar değil mi bunun? Oraya giden insanlar da öyle. Yakıtı insanlar oranında gibi. Ölüdürler. Dolayısıyla şuur sahibi,
the ones who go to hellfire, they will be just like stones. They will be dead people. A person with an open consciousness, a people with sincerity would never go to hell. That is made impossible by God. A person, a sincere person, who has an open consciousness, they would never enter into hell. But surely, believers will see that there will be people burning in hellfire. There will be people screaming in hellfire. And that will grant more beauties for believers, as they will make a comparison. There will be no coups, no police, no diseases, no such ailments in paradise, in heaven. God is creating all this trouble and hardship in this world so that people will be just asking for heaven, not this world. God has created this risk of a coup in the world. Now people just calm down. Maybe they assume that they would be not a secondary one. But if the army wants really, they could carry out another coup. What is most important is God wills. If God wills, that will occur. Doğu Perinçek says there will not be a second coup, but there could be.
Şimdi sen diyor bak, ölülere söz duyuramaz. Ve arkadan dönüp giden sana çare duyuramaz. Ne demek? Şuuru kapalı.
Verse 52, I seek refuge in God from the accursed Satan. You will not make dead men hear. You will not make deaf men hear the call. When they turn their backs in flight. The major error in this trial would not be to appreciate God's artistry. The major mistake of a believer would be to forget God's artistry in this world. People are inclined towards forgetting things so easily. The wisdom on a leaf, the intelligence on a leaf, the intelligence that we find in the grass, that could never be compared with the intelligence in man, much more superior. We find a greater intelligence in the leaves, in the grass. While we're just going out on the streets, we see there's dust on the ground, for instance. If we were to take some dust, if we were to look into that dust under the microscope, we would still see that there would be billions of bacteria, fungi, and all kinds of life.
Muazzam bir akıl ve muazzam üreme kabiliyeti.
When we magnify those, we would encounter an amazing cell structure, an amazing capacity to reproduce. As you have stated, people cannot really understand in totality how photosynthesis occurs in the leaves. God's artistry is so glorious. When people ponder, they are in fear, they are in awe. They cannot really think, contemplate with profound way of thinking. However, nothing would happen to them really. God has created human beings in a way that they should think. And tests will go on, trials will go on. There will be great incidents, great occurrences. These will not stop. They should forget about that. Other than Mahdi, there will be no time of peace. There will be no time of security. They were denying that there could be a coup attempt, but on 30th August, they were so much in fear during those celebrations, they did not allow the tanks, the jet
tank
fighters to
geçemiyor.
fly.
Tankla
And also
içeri
the
giremiyor.
weapons of those soldiers were not
Orada
loaded
şey
with
işte,
bullets. What was the reason? They were so much in
Hazır
fear
onu
that they could be
ezerler diye.
attacked. They did not allow the
Silah yok
tanks
hiçbirinin.
to pass there during the ceremony because they were in
Demek
fear
ki
that the
tehlike
tanks
büyük.
would be directing right on top of the
Tehlikeleri o bekliyor.
civilians or the officials. And this means that there's still a great threat. That threat of a coup is just persistent.
Bir de çok basit, akılsız bir genç grubu türemiş ama çok kalabalıklar. İç sürüsü gibiler. Usluplar çok basit. Çok aşağılık.
And there are
tutumları
also
var.
crowded
Hem görgüsüz,
youth.
hem küstah, hem akılsız,
They have
hem bilgisiz,
a very
cahil.
humiliated way of speaking.
Böyle tam
They have no proper way of thinking. They are
dangalak bir
ignorant.
lafından söylüyorum. Ne kadar fazlalar ya. Birbirlerine hitapları hep küfür. Çok
There are so
dar
many such
kelimeler
types of
var.
people.
Pis
They
ya.
always use curses
Sevgili
and
hiç kimse
swearing
yok.
when they are addressing one
Kız
another.
arkadaşlar da çok şirret oluyor.
They don't speak with
Böyle belalı, pislik, kirli,
rich words. They don't have a
tuzakçı,
good way of speaking.
saldırgan.
They have no love for
Tam kulağı
anyone.
kesik.
And their girlfriends also.
Hükümet bu konuda da çok
They are so wild.
ilgisiz.
They attack one
Habire Darwinist
another.
eğitim yapıyor. Yol köprü yaparak netice alacağını zannediyor. Halbuki bu
And the
gençlerin
government
eğitimi
is
çok
really
önemli.
not paying attention to this
Bunlarla
terrible
ilgili
situation of
özel
the
bir çalışma
youth.
yapılması lazım.
They're just
Yani
giving
kendi
Darwinist
hallerine
education at
bırakmış
schools.
haldeler.
And they assume that by means of making bridges, building
Tabii
building
hepsi de
bridges,
Tayyip
people
Hoca'dan
could correct
beklemek
themselves.
olmaz.
That will never
Milli
be
Eğitim
the
Bakanı
case.
devreye girecek.
They just
Bakanlar
leave the
devreye
youth
girecekler.
on their own. But it
Hükümet
is not
üyeleri
really,
Tayyip Hoca'dan bir şey bekliyorlar.
it is not really
Tek başına bir insan. Herkes ondan bekliyor.
possible
İşte ya bu
to
anormal bir
expect
şey.
everything from
Olur
Tayyip
mu?
Erdoğan. Tayyip Erdoğan is a
Kurumdan vazife çıkaracak.
man, really. He's an individual, but everyone
Yani
is
İçişleri
expecting
Bakanı
all
ayrı,
these
Dışişleri
accomplishments
Bakanı
from
ayrı,
him. The Minister of
Milli Eğitim Bakanı ayrı.
Education and the
Yani
Minister of
İçişleri Bakanı
Interior,
bile
the Minister of
gençlerin
Foreign
eğitimine ilgilenecek.
Affairs,
Milli
they should
Eğitim
all
ilgilenecek.
just strive
Dışişleri
to bring this
ilgilenecek.
goodness,
Dışarıdaki
this-
vatandaşlarımızın eğitimiyle.
this education of the
Ya
youth.
bana ne, beni
The
ilgilendirmiyor
Minister
dediğim
of
için.
Education should definitely pay great attention in how to train our youth, how to educate our youth. They should not turn a blind eye to this situation.
Benim arkadaşlarımın taklidini yapan gençler oluyor. Ama orada gençlerin erkek çocuğunu kız kadın haline getiriyor. O çok çirkin. Ben
There
öyle
are
şeyden çok
certain
rahatsız
young
oluyorum. Ben
people
seyretmem
who
onu.
try to,
Kızlar
who try
güzel
to
mesela, kızların
imitate my
yaptığı taklitler
friends,
hoşuma gidiyor.
but they
Ya
just
benim
try to,
taklitleri de güzel.
they try to
Erkek
use
delikanlı kadın kılığına
boys
girmesi çok
to appear
çok
as
düşürücü.
girls.
Yani
I'm
homoseksüel
never pleased with
propagandası gibi.
such scenes. If they imitate me, if they
Bayağı
try
rahatsız
to
edici.
copy
Bunu
me
yapmasın.
or my friends,
Yani
that is really
yapmasa
good,
ben
but
yayınlayacağım.
in other words, if
Taklitler
they
çok
use
güzel taklit
men
yapıyorlar.
to act
Yani
as
hoş taklit,
women,
kızlar da
really,
güzeller.
I would never be pleased with
kızlar.
it.
Ama erkek çocuğu kadın kılığına girmesi ne demek ya?
There are some nice, beautiful girls
Ne
who
kadar
just
yakışıksız
imitate
bir
my
hareket.
friends.
Bunu yapmasın.
They should never use boys to appear
Ağzı
as
bozukları da
women,
ya güzel
ladies.
konuş,
These
sevgi
are
dolu konuş,
improper
böyle
things.
yapma
See,
diye.
that
Herkes
means
birbirine
an
uyarsın.
homosexual
Ya kızlara
propaganda.
devam edin siz onu demeye. O
And
açılır
also,
onlar. Ya bunlar hiç uyaran olmamış. Bunlar direkt sokağa doğuyorlar, sokağa
when
fırlıyorlar.
those persons
Bunlar
write
sokak eğitiyor.
unacceptable
Ve
words,
Darwinist materyalist eğitim aldıkları için
when
büyük bir
people
bölümünün
speak
ağzı
with
da kafası da
swearing
mantığı da
and
bozuluyor.
curses, what needs to be
Sevgisi
done
oluyor
is to
yani. Canım
write to those
kardeşim,
people
bunu
and
böyle
tell them
diyeceğini
that they
şöyle
should
desen
speak with good words.
ne
Because of
kaybedersin
Darwin's
dersin.
education,
Ya
while they're on the
kısa da söyleyeyim bak,
streets,
ondan ona
they don't
zincirleme
really know
girmişler.
how to speak properly.
Mesela diyor
So
ki
you
ne
need to
ayaksınız
write to
siz?
them.
Ya
You need
canım
to
kardeşim
tell
siz
them,
ne
why would you
ayaksınız?
ever speak these
Sizin hakkınızda
words?
bilgi almak istiyorum.
For
Bunu
example,
söyle dersin. Yani
one
sizin
writes
ayaksınız.
saying,
Çünkü
what kind
onu
of a
söylediğinde
person
zaten
are you?
kendisinin içi sıkılıyor.
You need to write to that
Rahatsız
person
oluyor,
saying,
üzülüyor yani.
this way of
Sevgisi
speaking
kırılmış.
is not really nice. You need to ask,
Şimdi
I
karşı
want more
tarafın daha
information
gücünü
about
artırır.
you.
Belli ki
Because when they are
kıskananlar
just
var.
speaking such
Kıskanılan
words of
insan
swearing
güçlüdür.
and curses, that would be a
Kıskanan
disturbance for
insan
them, really.
muzafferdir zaten.
They would definitely feel
Sükse yapıyordur. Belli ki zavallı konumdasın.
that pain in their hearts. When a
Bir
person
kere sevilmezsin böyle olduğunu.
is just envied by
Sevgiyi
others, this
yaşayamazsın,
means that
dostluğu
person is
yaşayamazsın.
strong. That
Yaşamın
person,
anlamı
that
kalmıyor
person
o
has
zaman.
really power.
Yani sevgisiz
So when
yaşıyorsan
those persons are
hayatın
jealous,
anlamı
really,
kalmıyor.
they could never
Onun için böyle kısaca da olsa onları
live with
açıklamakta
friendship
fayda var.
and also harmony. They could
Bazı
have
kardeşlerimiz
no
bunlara
love for anyone.
sert bir uslupla
So when those people
karşılık
are
veriyorlar.
living that kind
Böyle
of a
olmaz.
loveless life, they would never be pleased with this kind of a living. So those persons who don't speak with words of love and friendship, who use curses and swearing in their messages, they should be responded properly, teaching them the good way of
Bakayım.
speaking, the good way of writing. Everyone should be patient.
Çok güzel.
Our hashtag is on the second
Hemen 2.
in Twitter. We await unity of love. It has just come
Bir de
up
hiç bela,
to the
hastalık,
second
dert olsun
location
istemiyor insanlar. Açlık
in
olsun
Turkey
istemiyor.
Trends.
Ya o mümkün değil. Özellikle Orta Doğu. Zaten peygamberden
And
çıktı.
people don't want
Orada
any
felaket
trouble.
yağmur
People
gibi
don't
yağar.
want
Orta Doğu
any
bataklığı. Orta
difficulties.
Doğu bataklığı
They
değil.
don't want any
Ortada
diseases or
imtihan sahası.
poverty,
Orta
starvation.
Doğu imtihan
However, the
sahası.
Middle East is where the
İmtihanın
prophets
en yoğun
are
olduğu yer.
rising from.
Mehdi
So the
çıkacak,
Middle
İsa
East
Mesih çıkacak.
is not a
Orada bir
swamp,
yoğunlaşma
as
oluyor.
people describe. The Middle East is a place of test. The Middle East is a place of trial. Mahdi will come out from the Middle East. Jesus Messiah will come out from the Middle East. That is why there's this kind of an intensive trial in that special geography.
Geleneksel Mehdi'yi böyle kabus gibi göstertiyorlar. Tabii ki Mehdi sıcak, sevecen, hoş bir insandır, bir mümindir. Yani
In the
onlar
traditional
Allah gibi
Orthodox way of
görüyorlardı. Allah'tan büyük
understanding,
görüyorlardı.
they used to give an image as if the Mahdi was a
Yani
kind
böyle
of a
işte sarılır,
nightmare for
tepesine gelir,
them.
insanları keser,
May God
doğrar.
forbid. They assumed that Mahdi was like
Mehdi gelince
God.
ne yapacak? En
Surely
başta
God
sen
is
de oraya
beyond
çıkıyor
this.
cübbeli.
They assumed that Mahdi
Şiiler
would
en
kill
ziyade
people,
onları
slaughter
beklerler.
people.
Ne yapacak diyor?
Mahdi will
Sadece
come
sevgi,
with
merhamet,
love.
dostluk, kardeşlik,
Mahdi will
iyilik,
stop
güzellik.
all that slaughter.
Olur.
Mahdi will
O da
stop all
zoraki
that
kabul edecek.
bloodshed.
O şey.
Mahdi will have no
Allah
relevance with
kalmadı.
political life.
Hiçbir
Mahdi's
tanım
major
umursamaz diyor.
purpose
Yönet
will
ve
only to
devam ediyor. Ne
attain
yapalım biz?
friendship, alliance, love, and compassion amongst people, and he will
Ben
be
onun gitmesini
forced
istiyorum.
to
Gitmesek
accept
gider
people's
mi?
allegiance.
Ahmet Hakan yazısının devamında ise yakında İslam camiada Bediüzzaman Said Nursi Hazretleri ile Fethullah Gülen arasında bir kıyaslama başlayabileceğini ve
Ahmet
aralarındaki
Hakan
bazı eklemler
says
olduğu konusunun tartışmaya açılabileceğini söylemiş.
there would be a comparison between Fethullah Gülen and Bediüzzaman in the coming days, and their similarities would be just open to discourse. It's really so difficult to discern the British deep state. The British deep state just came like a snake into that community, the Fethullah Gülen community, and devoured them in totality. And there are really very rare persons who could save themselves from that snake, the British deep state. This evangelical culture has gained dominion in the Gülen community. They are practicing the commandments in the Torah, commandments in the New Testament. In the Torah, for instance, it says there should be bloodshed on the streets, people should shout out loud, and the houses should be put on fire. However, all those would only be practiced on the polytheists, and that is just describing a certain incident in a certain period of history. But I see that this kind of an evangelical culture based on slaughtering and massacring others is just prevailing in the Gülen community, and they consider Turkey to be a foreign country, not their own land, but a different land, a foreign land. They consider the United States to be their homeland. That is why they appear as perfect citizens. They are so much loyal to the US. They consider the US to be their own state. They provide intelligence to the USA, and they consider the goodness, the interests of the United States. We don't want them to hate the US. We want them to take care of their citizens in the United States, not trying to persecute their own land, Turkey, just trying to oppress their own people, the Turkish people. That is something terrible, really, not acceptable.
kadınların erkek kılığına girmesi de çok kötü. Bayağı itici duruyor. Bazen görüyorum Facebook'ta falan.
And also women appearing
Bayağı
like
kötü.
men. That is also dispelling
Kesinlikle
that
yapmasınlar.
I see such instances in
Ben
Facebook.
kızlar taklit
That is
yapmışlar,
really
çok
bad.
güzel. İkisi de
They
güzel
should
kızlar.
never come close to
Ama
such
erkek
an
çocuğu,
appearance.
yani o da yapmış. Kadın
For example,
taklit
there are
Bayağı
girls,
kötü.
two girls who try
Sen
to
ne
imitate
yapmış
my
oluyorsun
friends.
ona? Neyin propagandasını
That is really
yapmış oluyorsun?
beautiful, but
Kendini
how
ne
could
hale
it be
getirmiş
that two
oluyorsun?
young boys, they try to look
Ya
like
insan
women?
ona gülecek hali
What
kalır
kind of
mı?
a propaganda is that really?
Gülünecek
Why
bir
would you
durum var
ever
mı?
turn
İnsan
yourself
açıyor
into
yani.
that kind of a position? How could any person laugh at you if you were appearing like that really? People could only
Merhaba.
have pity for you.
Yani öyle kusur bulunacak gibi bir tavır
Now, I can
Hayır,
see
vardır
that Tayyip
tabii,
Erdoğan is
yanlış
sincere in
şeyler,
his
hükümet
efforts.
oluyordur.
Nobody could
İlla
ever
ki ama
find
yani
mistakes.
şahsı açısından Tayyip
There could
Erdoğan
be
ben
certain
samimi
abnormalities
düşünüyorum.
maybe in the government.
Bir
There could
Anadolu
be errors in
delikanlısı.
the government. But as an
Yani
individual, I believe
vatanı
that Tayyip Erdoğan is
teslim
so
etmiyor.
sincere. He's an
Adamlar teslim
Anatolian
edeceksiniz.
Braveheart,
Öyle yapmıyor.
really.
Konu bu.
He doesn't give
Yani
away
milli bir insan.
Turkey. They want him to surrender
Eskiden böyle
Turkey.
olmuyordu.
He does not allow that to happen.
Şapkasını alan gidiyordu.
He's a national person.
Höt dedi mi bitiyordu iş.
This was not the case in the
Tayyip
past.
Hoca
People were just
yürekli çıktı.
leaving.
maşallah, Yürekli delikanlı.
When they were imitated, people were just leaving their
Ama
offices. But
tabii
Tayyip
eksiklikleri
Erdoğan
olduğunu, yanlış
is a
olduğunu
courageous
eleştiriyoruz.
person.
Eleştirmeye de devam edeceğiz.
He's a
Yanlış gördüklerini
strong
söyleyeceğiz.
personality. But when he has errors,
Yani bu tarikatlar
definitely
konusunda
we
gereksiz
criticize
adamları
him.
huylandırdılar.
We
bir
just
kısım
mention
insanları.
about his mistakes and
Hükümetin aleyhine oldu.
errors.
Olabilir yani. Bırakın adamlar yıllardan beri ne yapıyorsa
But
yapmış,
they
hiçbir
caused
şey de
fear
olmamış.
in
Bundan
religious
sonra mı
communities,
olacak
in
ya?
religious orders.
Değil mi? Özellikle menzil
Nothing
cemaati çok
happened
hoşuna
for
gidiyor.
years. Why should that be
Ya
the
bunlar
case in
da
the
kendi
future?
halinde Müslüman adamlar, dindar bu. Hep
They are
devlete
just
sadakat
oppressing the
bunlarda
Menzil
esastır.
community.
Aslında onların bir
They are
görüşleri var.
Muslims. They are just living a
Çıktıkları
religious
çıkmıyorlar da avukatı
life.
gibi oldum ben yani.
They have loyalty to the
Gırtları çıkmıyor ya.
state.
Çıkın bir şeyler konuşun mübarekler ya.
Let
Hep
us
böyledir
meet
yani.
with them. Let
Süleyman
us
söylüyor, çıtları
talk to
çıkmıyor.
them. They don't ever
Yıllardan
speak
beri hiç
out.
demeç
I'm just
vermezler.
like their attorney.
Sen
It
yazısını
has always
söylüyor,
been the
çıtları
case.
çıkmaz. Abi
This fame on the
konuşuyorlar ya,
community
bizden ne
again.
zarar
They never
görürüz?
speak for
Devletimiz,
years.
milletimiz bağlıyız, seviyoruz
And
deseler.
the new
Bu hükümeti
followers,
rahatlatır.
they don't ever
Bir
make any
konuşalım o şeyh
statements.
efendiyle.
But if they were to say,
Menzil
"What
şeyhlerine
did you
görüşelim.
see any harm from? Did you see any harm from us?"
Birkaç bir
We
şey
are always
söylesinler
loyal
ya,
to
ne
the
var bunda
state.
yani?
Let us meet one of those
Değil
sheikhs
mi?
from Menzil community. They need to speak certain words, really.
Tayyip Hoca biraz küsmüş olabilir onları sistemliyor. Çünkü böyle belalı bir devirde yalnız bıraktıklarını düşünüyor. Halbuki biraz ona manevi destek sağlasalar, ya dua ediyor sana işte Allah razı olsun.
He thinks that he's been left in
Devam ede.
isolation.
Çıtları çıkmıyor. Sanki yok hükmünde.
If they were to give support to
Ya
him,
çık bir
really,
dua et bir şey de
by
ya.
saying,
Yani güzel,
"May
Allah
God be
razı olsun, iyi
pleased
hizmet
with
ediyorsun"
you.
falan de.
It is as if
Yalnız bıraktıkları
It
için
is
biraz
as if he
içerliyor
does
olabilir
not
Tayyip Hoca,
exist.
haklı olarak.
you may say, "It is so nice."
Böyle olmaz. Değil mi? Yani madem yönetime
Tayyip
katılmıyorsun,
Erdoğan may be sorry
yönetene
because
hiç
he's left
olmazsa
in
destek sağla, yani
isolation, but
manevi destek sağla.
that should not be the case.
Yani en azından bir dua ettiğini söyle yani, ne var bunda?
You
Değil
should
mi?
give support by giving morale to him, by just saying that you are praying for him.
Bu sene hocam kıyamet diye yakın bir zamanda kıyametin gelmesine sebep olacaksınız. Hiç bu konu üstüne oturmasanız
Dear Master, you're speaking
çabuk
about the
taşıyacağını
doomsday,
düşünüyor.
but that will be bringing
Yok
the
ya,
doomsday
dünya
closer.
eskidi, her
Why do
yer
you ever
eskidi,
mention about
Paris
this topic?
eskidi, Londra
It thinks
eskidi,
that
New York
doomsday would
eskidi.
hasten if
Her
we are
yer
to speak
dökülüyor yani.
about it. Well, the world
Kıyametin
has
yakın
grown
olduğunu söylüyor.
old.
Sular
Paris,
eskidi,
London, New York,
göller,
all
her
those
yer
cities,
eskidi yani.
they're about to fall apart.
Hurdaya döndü dünya.
It is apparent
Yani
that
kıyametin yakın
the
olduğu çok
doomsday
açık
is
anlaşılıyor.
at hand. The seas,
Her
the
yer eski ya.
lakes,
Mesela bebeğe gidiyorum,
everywhere
duvarları
has just
falan
grown so
dökülmüş.
old. It's apparent that the last
Çok yavaş
hour
yürümüşler
is
yani.
at hand, really.
Başka yere
I'm
gidiyoruz,
just
gene öyle
visiting
etkilere
Bebek,
gidiyoruz.
really,
Her yer
this province
eskimiş
in
yani.
Istanbul. The walls, they have
Tüm
just
dünyada
grown
bir çürüme
so
var.
old.
Bağlar, bahçeler yok
And in
olmuş.
Etiler, throughout
Her
Istanbul,
yer
I see that
tesislerle dolu,
the city
beton
has grown
binalarla
old.
dolu.
The entire world is rotting down.
Kurbağalar ölüyor,
The
balıklar
gardens are
ölüyor.
lost, the vineyards are lost.
Kediler
They filled
gariplerin ne yapacağını
everywhere with
şaşırmış vaziyette böyle
facilities.
gözlerine.
Frogs
Ama
die,
onların
fish
tam şehir
die,
fırlaması olmuş birçoğu.
cats. They don't
Acayip
know
yani.
really what to
Trafikte falan
do.
bir sağa bakıyor, bir sola bakıyor. Tekrar sağa
But
bakıyor,
they
ondan sonra
have been
geçiyor
experts
falan.
to live in the cities, really.
Ya ışığın yanmasını bekliyor. Hayret, inanılır gibi.
Just in the
Milletle beraber
traffic.
bekliyor, halkla beraber.
We see them
Halk
looking
geçerken onlarla
to the right, to the
trafiktekilerle
left.
beraber hep
They
beraber
wait
geçiyor.
for the lights to turn
Ulan
to
şu Sarman'dan
green,
ben şüpheleniyorum.
and the
Kedilerin
cats
ne
and
bileyim
dogs,
ya.
they just
Hakikaten bunda bir şey.
move in the traffic
Her gün biri bu
with
duvarın
human
üstüne
beings.
çıkıyor
But
eğer ben
I'm just
tam
suspicious
gidecekken.
about
Bir de
Sarman.
sırtını dönüyor. Onu
She,
anlamadım.
maybe
Onu
she's
anlamadım.
not a cat.
Eve sokmuyoruz ya,
There's
protesto ediyor.
something about it, really.
Ya kardeşim
Just
sen
turns
pasaklı bir
his
kedisin.
back
Seni
when
eve
I'm
sokmayacak.
about to leave
Allah
because
Allah.
we don't allow him in the house. He's
Çünkü
just
pompon tüyleri
protesting. But
falan evine gidip sürünüyor. Evin
you're a
içinde
dirty
olacak
cat.
bir şey.
I will not allow you in the
O an
house.
gıcık oldu. Arkadaşına niye bu kadar ihtimam
It has so
gösteriyor?
much fur, length the
Acara
hair.
gösterilen titizlik ona biraz bozuluyor.
Most
Halbuki onun da
probably
villası
he
var.
has. We are
Ama
just
villasında başka bir kedi
so
işgal
meticulous
etmiş.
about his friend Ajar, the dog.
Yani ki sen yat.
But Sarman
bence.
has a villa again.
Değil mi?
But in Sarman's villa,
Ama
there's
o tip
another
acayip
cat, and
kızdıracak
because of
hareket
that
yani. Böyle
invasion,
geriniyor, meriniyor,
he's not
yuvanın dışına
pleased. But
çıkmıyor.
if you want, you may go and
Geçen günler bayağı bir
may
eylem
go
yapmış.
and
Birisi
live in
gitmiş
that
aşağıda bağırmış,
villa
çağırmış, bir şeyler yapmış.
yourself.
Ne dediğini de millet anlamıyor ama sonra bir böyle iyi bir tavır göstermiş. Herhalde beni
But Sarman made
hani
great
darılttığını
protest.
falan
He
düşündü
just
anladığım
went
kadarıyla.
down in the streets.
Böyle daha
He started
inisiyatif, daha
shouting
iyi bir
out
tavır
loud.
göstermiş.
People cannot really
Nerede
understand
o
what
belgeler?
he's speaking about. But he just turned out to attain a more humane
Sahne
character.
güler yüzlü ikiz
Where is
diye bir
that
fotoğraf
one?
göndermiş.
Sarman.
Hakikaten aynısı.
They just
Deniz
sent a
yatağına
photograph of Sarman,
böyle
saying
soygununa
that this
bakar
is
gibi
the
bakıyor.
laughing twin of
Ya
Sarman.
tüyleri falan kabarıyor, onu gördüm böyle pusuya yatıyor. Yanlara falan geçiyor. Büyük bir dikkatle böyle heyecan ve korkuyla onu izliyor. Allah'ım onun üstüne falan atsak cinnet geçirir herhalde.
When he's just looking at the seabed in the pool, Sarman the
Kıvamı
cat,
suylanıyor onunla.
he's just looking at it as if it's a
O suyun
wild
üstünde falan
animal, a
geziyor ya.
beast.
Şimdi bacağı macağı
If
da
we
yok.
were to place him on that
Yani
on
tam
top of that
çıkaramadı onu
seabed,
herhalde.
he would go crazy, really. That seabed has no legs, so Sarman the cat is just trying to figure out what kind of an animal it is, really, just swimming on the pool.
Dün sosyal medyada görevine son verilen bir kişiden bahsediyor. Bu kişi Mehmet Said Kotku takipçisidir. FETÖ oyun yapıyor diğer cemaatlerden insanların.
Mehmet Said
Tasfiyesi
Kotku,
sırrı
this
yazar istiyor.
person, this was a fake account in the social media, and they just try to make use of such fake accounts to make propaganda for the Gülen community.
Hayır, hata yaptı.
Well,
Uyaralım. Bu vatanın evladı yani.
let us give moral support to Tayyip
Hakikaten
Erdoğan.
gecesini gündüzüne
When he has
katıyor.
errors, let us warn
Garip
him.
diyor. Ya, zor iş yaptık işte.
He's just working day and night, and he's making efforts, and he's really working so hard.
O duvarın üstünde o beklemesi, orada bir şey var ha benim anladığım ya. Ben anlamadım oraya. Ya mutlaka oraya gidiyor. İlginç bir hayvan yani.
Why does Sarman wait on top of that wall? It's a strange animal, really.
Menzil ve İskender Ağa cemaati diyor. Hiç bilgileri de yok İskender Ağa diye. İskender Paşa cemaatinin İskender Ağa cemaati diyor. Yani bilgi araştırma, inceleme diye bir şey yok bunlarda. Tamamen kulaktan duyma.
This person says
İskender Ağa
İskender
cemaati
Ağa
inanılır gibi.
community. Well, this
İskender
word
Ağa
is wrong,
cemaati.
really. They don't ever make research about this specific religious community. He names it to be Iskender Ağa Mosque. There's no such mosque.
Özetle menzil cemaatinden bir sorun çıkmaz. İskender Paşa cemaatinden bir sorun çıkmaz. Mahmut Hoca cemaatinden bir sorun
In
çıkmamış.
summary, no trouble
Yazıcılar
will come out
oradan,
from the
yeni
İskender Paşa
asırlardan bir sorun
community, the
çıkmaz.
Mezri community,
Süleymancılardan bir sorun
Mahmut
çıkmaz.
Hoca community,
Bu adamlar, bu insanlar mağdur edecek bir şey
or the
olmasın.
Yazıcı community.
Yani bu çok büyük
There will
fitne
be
olur.
no issues, no
Sayın Hoca da
troubles
bir kısa
coming out of
açıklama
them.
yapsın. Bekliyorum. Bak
They
kaç
should
gündür
never bring
söylüyorum. Daha hala bir
sorrow or
açıklama yapmadı.
harm on those religious
Derli toplu
communities.
açıklama yapsın. Bu
Anti-Parda should make
cemaatler
a brief
hep hükümeti
statement.
korumuştur şu ana kadar hükümetleri. Menderes hükümetine destek oldular. Demirel'e de destek oldular. Hiçbir zaman
All those
iddialı
religious
oldular. Onlar hep
communities
iktidar,
and
sağ
orders,
iktidarlara
they
destek
have given
olmuşlar.
support to the
Sol
government.
iktidara destek
That
olmuyorlar.
has been the case
Sağa
in the
kim gelirse
past.
gelsin destek oluyorlar. Tamam. Daha ne yapsın adam yani?
They always give support to the right-wing governments, really. What should they do?
Almanya'da şarkın var, iyi dönem çarkın var. Almanya'da şarkın var, iyi dönem çarkın var. Bence geçsiz gezerken senin palton kürkün var. Bence geçsiz gezerken senin palton kürkün var. Almancı salim salim, ne olacak böyle halim? Almancı salim salim, ne olacak böyle halim? Azıcık da bana ver, olmazsın böyle zalim. Azıcık da bize ver, olmazsın böyle zalim. Gözyaşlarım karışıyor sellere, güzelim imdadıma sen yetiş yetiş. Hoppa! Benim ahım kötülerde kalmasın, hiçbir tabip derde derman bulmasın. Benim ahım kötülerde kalmasın, hiçbir tabip derde derman bulmasın. Şu dünyada 3-5 dostum olmasın, vicdanınız yok mu sizin kötüler adiler? Şu dünyada 3-5 dostum olmasın, vicdanınız yok mu sizin kötüler adiler? Doktor Oktay, Harun! Uyuma orada, uyuma! Hoppa!
İmtihan acı olur sonu. Acı imtihanın sonu da tatlı olur. Hafif imtihan beklemesinler, ahir zamandayız.
The end of a difficult trial in this world would have a very beautiful result, but the end of a slight trial would only mean a slight heaven, a slight paradise, a slight love. But God wants a most profound love. As much as the difficulties and hardship in this world, that person, the believer, will have a most profound love. Because God is pleased with the love that a person has in his heart. Otherwise, there would be brooks in heaven, there would be palaces and beautiful houses in heaven, and they would just remain like that in material form. But the beauty of heaven is only love. A weak love would only result in a weak beauty. But for a person to attain profound love, there is definitely need for profound difficulties, profound trials, profound hardship. Otherwise, there could be no other solution. So the person will attain a profound love as much as he passes through difficulties and hardship in this world. And that love would be eternal in the hereafter. That is why nobody should ever object to the hardship and difficulties given to believers. For instance, the soldiers are on trial. They just go and confront the PKK terrorists. The police is also in a trial. The citizens are passing through a trial. God is the creator of the PKK. God creates the bullets of the PKK. And also God creates the bullets that target the PKK. God is the creator of both. God creates unbelievers. God creates Islam and believers. And our soldiers, they have a profound faith. Even if they would be injured from their shoulder, the bullet just remains there in his shoulder. You just saw our people. Our people's arms were just amputated. They lost their legs because of those bullets that just came out of those weapons of coup plotters. And they weren't even aware that they had lost their arms. It's another miracle. There would be an incredible pain actually when that person would lose his arm, but he would not be aware. And I looked at that one who lost his arm. He was so joyful, he was so delighted. He received this rank from God, this special rank from God.
O gece olayları yaşayıp da böyle makam alamayanlar gıpta ediyorlardı.
And also in that night there were many other ones who passed through that hardship and difficulties in that night during the coup attempt, and they were so much in admiration of those ones who were injured, who turned out to be veterans and martyrs. We need to appreciate God's artistry, not speaking about that kind of just to transfer information, to give information, but to be amazed with God's artistry, to be amazed with God's beauty. This is what is most influential on people. There was Mustafa Amca, who was shot in that evening. He was really a very cute person, a very valuable person. He lost the sole of his foot, but he was not aware.
Mesela baktığında bilgisi az bir insan gibi görünüyor. Cahil bir insan gibi görünüyor.
Maybe he seems to be a person with no information, maybe with no profound knowledge. But there could be people who are so much educated, who are so much knowledgeable about various topics, but that person would go into hell. But sometimes that patience he shows to a bullet actually would be adequate to allow him in paradise, in heaven. This is in people's nature. They always mention the names of those
bir dönem.
of those
Tabii
ones who
yaşamış.
pass through hardship and difficulties. For instance,
O dönemde
when
bak
we
hiç
remember
akla
the
gelmiyor.
prophet Joseph,
Sadece o
prophet
hapis dönemini
Yusuf,
orası
we
biliyor.
just remember his life in prison.
Mesela Hazreti Ali dedim mi
Actually,
hep
that was
kabadayıyla
only 7 years
esastır.
he passed
Hep kabadayıyla akla gelir.
in that prison, but
İşte o
we know
Ayberk'in
that
kapısını sökmesi,
he's just renowned
17
with
yerinden
his
yaralanması,
difficulties and hardship that he
o akla gelir.
experienced in that prison. And when we think about Hazret Ali,
Mesela 17
we
yerinden
remember
bir yerinden
his
yaralanma
fearless stance
verdiği
when he just fought
sevinç
against
ayrı.
the unbelievers.
17 yerden
And he was
yaralanmanın
injured
verdiği
from
sevinç ayrı.
17 different places in
17
his
yerinden
body.
yaralandığı için
When,
büyük bir
if
coşkuyla
he would be
sevinir.
injured from only a
Bir yerine
single
yaralan deseler
place,
ona ait
if
bir
he had
sevinç
only
olur.
one wound really,
Ama 17 yer
he would be
demek tam
delighted. But
kabadayı
he
delikanlı
was
demektir.
wounded from 17
Hayber Kalesi'nin
places.
kapısını sökmesi,
And
o meydana
when we
gelen
hear that
adrenalin
he was
sevgi
wounded from 17 different places, we know
muazzam.
that he was really a
Mesela
brave
Hazreti
person.
Ebubekir o
He
devrin
was really a very courageous person.
trilyoneri.
That is why we have
Yani
much more love for him.
binlerce
We have a
devesi falan
profound
var
love
öyle.
for him. And Hazret
On
Ebu
binlerce
Bekir,
koyun
he was a
öyle çok
trillionaire in
zengin.
his time. He had
Bütün malını
thousands of
Resulullah'a veriyor
camels.
tamamen.
He had tens and
Beş
thousands
kuruşu
of
yok.
sheep. He was really a rich
Hepsini veriyor yani.
person. And he dedicated his
Zerre endişe etmiyor.
entire
Benim malım mülküm
entire
kalmaz, ne olur falan
belongings
demiyor hiç.
to Resulullah, to the Prophet
Yani
sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem.
zenginlikteki itibarımda kalmaz da demiyor.
He had
Fakir
no
bir insan
concerns
oluyor.
really if he would lose all
Bütün
his
malını mülkünü
possessions
veriyor.
or if he would lose all his
Hazreti
all
Ebubekir
his
de mesela yaşlı
fame.
haline rağmen kabadayıdır.
He turned out to be a poor
Bilinmez sultan.
person, and
Hazreti
he
Ömer
just
kabadayıdır.
devoted his
Namur
entire
kabadayıdır.
belongings.
Hatta Resulullah diyor
And Hazret Ömer,
ortaya
he
çıkmayın
was a
diyor.
strong heart.
O
He was a strong
Kabe'ye
person.
geliyor.
And the
İşte
messenger of God, he said,
karısını dul
don't go
bırakmak
out,
isteyen
but he came to Kabe,
eğer
Hazreti
varsa
Ömer.
diyor, yani ona benzer
And he just shouted out,
kişiler
saying,
gelsinler diyor.
is there anyone who wants
Tam
his wife
hakiki
to be
kabadayı.
widowed? I'm just
Ötleri
calling you
kokuyor
out, he
müşriklerin.
said.
Yerlerine bile
Just
kıpırdamıyor.
come here if you want. And
Güçlü,
he
kuvvetli
was
bir
really a
insan.
very bully. And the Mishrikun, the polytheists, they were so much in
Mesela
fear.
Hazreti Musa
When they saw
hep
Hazret
çilesiyle.
Ömer, he was really a very strongly built
Mesela
person.
Kur'an'da o bak çilesi anlatır Allah, hep çilesini.
And the prophet Moses, he
anlatmıyor,
passed
dikkat
through
ediyor musunuz?
difficulties and
Hep
hardship.
çilesi anlatılır.
And God is just
Bir tek Hazreti
mentioning
Süleyman'ın
about
rahatlığı anlatılır.
the difficulties he passed through,
Hep çile, hep
not
çile,
the
hep
times of
çilesi.
his comfort.
Çilesiyle biz onları çok seviyoruz.
Only the prophet Süleyman's
Hazreti Süleyman da
life of
akıllı ve
ease
nükteden
was
olmasıyla çok
was
severiz.
mentioned in the Quran
Şakacı,
because we love them with their
akıllı ve
difficulties.
nüktedandır.
And the prophet Solomon, we really love him because of his beautiful, wise character. He was really
Bu
a great personality, making jokes
Mustafa Öztürk
with a great
Mehmet
sense
okuyan
of humor. And this is how we love him also so much.
sevdiği bir
For
kişi.
example, Hazret Hamza, he was also one of the brave hearts,
İşte en büyük
lion-hearted ones. God is pleased with
Yani-
that really bravery.
tahmin etmesi mümkün
For
değil.
example, the prophet
Muazzam çile çekiyor.
Job, the prophet Ayub,
Felaket felaket üstüne,
he
bela
was really
bela
so
üstüne.
persevering.
Hiç çıtını
He
çıkartmıyor.
passed through all that hardship
Sadece
and
zikredemeyecek hale
difficulties.
geliyor Allah'a.
Disaster
Ya Rabbi,
followed
zikredemeyecek hale
disaster,
geldim, bana
but he
medet
never
diyor.
complained.
Tevbe.
And it was only
Çünkü
when
aşkı
he was not able to praise our
adeta
Lord,
kitabını
he
yazmış.
asked for
Yani öyle
salvation.
olur.
The prophet
Ne
Ayub,
oldu?
the prophet
Bak,
Job,
ondan sonra kaç nesil
he has
geçti,
written the book of love.
değil mi?
This is how a true lover
Sabrına
should
karşılık.
be, really. He had profound love of God. And that is why
Hasan
God
Hüseyin
had
mesela
so
onlar
much love for him.
Kerbala'da, hem o çile, Allah onları
Hasan
mesela
and
aç ve
Hüseyin,
susuz.
they showed great bravery in
İmtihan etti.
Karbala. They passed
Şehadetle
through so
imtihan
much
oldular.
hardship and difficulties there. They were left with no food, no water. They were martyred in the end.
Kadın da aşkta güzel oluyor. Kedi de aşkta güzel oluyor. Yoksa aşk olmasa Allah'a
Women are beautiful with love. Cats are beautiful with love.
Cennet Allah aşkıyla güzel.
Otherwise, without love, may God forbid, everything would
Aşkta
be
ancak çileyle oluyor.
terrible.
Bir türlü olmaz.
paradise, heaven is only beautiful with love of God. And love could only be attained by means of hardship and difficulties. No other way.
Oğuzhan nasılsın?
Allah şükür.
Bülent abi ne yapıyorsun?
Allah şükür estağfurullah.
Oğuzhan, how are you? Thanks to
Zaten
God, Master.
nasılsınız?
Bülent, how are you?
Gözler iyi değil mi bu aralar?
Thanks to God, Master. How are you?
İlaç iyi geldi.
Elhamdülillah, very well.
Maşallah. Oğuzhan hem çok modern hem çok kaliteli genç. Yani lise yıllarındayken çok az alameti vardı.
The way of Mahdi.
Yani beni düşündürmüştü bayağı.
When I was in my high school years, there were not really many signs of Mahdi.
İşte
And
insanlarda
I was
basiret,
thinking
feraset kapanması ve
profoundly.
ülfet var. Aslında şu Mehdiyetle ilgili alametler
People have
en
lost their
muayyen,
foresight.
dinsiz bile
People
iman
have grown
getirecek
so much
güçte.
accustomed to all these
Yani
incidents.
Resulullah 1400 yıl
But the
sonra
signs of Mahdi's appearance
mucize
are so
meydana
explicit, so clear.
yani ayın
Even if the
yarılması
most
gibi
resistant
mucizeler
person
bunlar.
would come to
Ayın
believe
yarılması
in
gibi.
Mahdi's appearance.
Muhteşem mucizeler.
Because these are the miracles
Hoca
of
efendiler
our
bunları
Prophet
gizliyor tabii,
sallallahu aleyhi ve
kapatıyorlar.
sellem. Just as the moon
İnsanlar da
has
kafasında
parted,
kapatıyorlar.
these are the miracles of the Prophet.
Ya
But
kardeşim,
those religious scholars are
iki uçlu
concealing
kurtuluruz,
these
olur mu?
marvels of the Prophet,
Allah
and
yaratıyor.
people lose
Mucize
their
olarak yarattı.
foresight.
İki uçlu.
How could there be a
Diğer kuyruklu
star, a
yıldızların
comet
aksi
with two
istikamet-
bright
aksi
ends?
istikamete gidiyor.
But God creates
Diğer
that
kuyruklu
as a
yıldızların aksi
miracle.
istikamete.
And it's
Olacak bir şey.
moving
Bir
in the
tane böyle
opposite
özellik.
direction of the other comets.
İki uçlu da bir tane. Ve binlerce yıllık
That is
tarihte ne zaman
Really
çıktığını bilmiyor.
amazing. There is only a
bir daha ne zaman
single
çıkacağı da
comet
bilinmiyor.
that
Nereden
acts
geldiği de
like this,
bilinmiyor.
that behaves like this. And in the thousand years of history, people really
Belki
could
yaşayan
not really
ilk
figure
hayvan.
out when it would appear
Aynı
and if
isimler
it had
Resulullah
appeared
diye
before.
Ve diyor bak diğer
That
kuyruklu
is
yıldızların daha
unprecedented
parlaktır.
and a great sign of
Ya
Mahdi's
kardeşim bu ne
appearance.
muazzam detaylar ya.
And that
Bak,
took
iki uç bir
place
kere
just exactly the
detay.
same way that the Prophet
Aksi yöne
foretold.
gitmesi detay.
And it is more
parlak
bright
olması
when
detay.
compared with the other
Yağmurlar
stars.
İlk önce diyor
This
azalacak
comet's
ondan
having two bright ends,
sonra da
two bright
çoğalacak diyor.
tails, that it is brighter than other
Ekonometri olacak diyor,
stars,
o kuyruklu yıldız
that it's
çıktı diyor.
moving in the opposite direction
Aynısı oldu ya. Ya muazzam detaylar var.
of other stars, and there would be an economic crisis.
Hadis okunduğunda,
All these have come
bazıları
out to be true with
sesini
great
yükseltip
details.
dinlenmemesini sağlamaya çalışıyor. Yaygara, aynen.
Evet.
And there were certain people who were trying to stop people speaking about this hadith.
İngiltere'ye sığınmış. Hayret ya, söylüyor peygamber. Aynı sinanlı 2 yıl üst üste oldu ya.
In the month of Ramadan, sun and moon eclipses between 15-day intervals. That is really so amazing. And the Prophet foretold this, and in two subsequent months of Ramadan, there were sun and moon eclipses in 15-day intervals. And when Mahdi will appear, there would be bloodshed in Kaaba. And that took place exactly the same way. How could you ever deny these truths?
Kardeşim olayın